Warning: this program may contain explicit language that may be considered offensive or inappropriate to children and some adults.
The following content is intended for mature audiences only.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Talk It Out. My name is Tristan Daniels. Obviously, I am not Deary, so he's currently starring in The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas here at the Springer Opera House in Columbus, Georgia. So if you live here in Columbus or the surrounding area, please call the Springer Opera House and get tickets. This is the last weekend that it's running. So let's do some housekeeping stuff really quick. Wherever you're watching this, whether it be YouTube, Facebook, please take a minute and like the page, leave a comment, share, all those good things. That's how we reach more people. That's how we can keep doing lovely things like this. So with all of that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and get started and introduce our panel for this evening. All right, so returning to Talk It Out is Justin Lawrence. Justin is a co-host of The Collective Objective, a podcast that focuses on political and social issues in the world today. They also share the work of other content creators. You can find The Collective Objective on Facebook at www.facebook.com/The Collective Objective. You can find all their social media on their Facebook page. So here, what's going on, Justin?
Hey, Tristan, how you doing?
I'm all right. I'm a little nervous. I'm not gonna lie. I've never hosted this before. I feel there's so much pressure.
You're doing good. You're doing good.
Appreciate it, man. All right. Next up is someone who I've had the pleasure of being on this podcast with. Her name is Samantha Harden. Sam is an Atlanta born and bred with two beautiful daughters. She has an edible business called Marley Bears that focuses on making the infused gummy bears, and she is a realtor. She is the go-to agent for the Atlanta real estate market. Before getting into real estate, she was an educator and founded the dance department at a local Atlanta charter school. Besides her interest in cooking, real estate, and dance, she loves the water and is a mermaid at heart. Sammy, where you? Hey, girl, hey.
Hey, how y'all doing?
We can see you're a busy lady selling these houses, making those moves.
Yeah, so in the middle of my showing today, I caught a flat tire, so we got a little bit delayed, but I'm still
It's
here.
okay. You here, and that's the
and I'm ready
important
to
part.
talk it out.
Talk it out. All right, and our last returning panelist is Albrandios Frazier, aka King B. He is an artist, model, writer, CEO, and creator of Above Restricted Thoughts, and an Atlanta realtor as well. So, where you at, King B? Oh, I think we may be having some technical issues with King B. So we're going to come back to him once we get that straightened out, guys. All right, so new panelists. New to the panel is Summer McCusker. Now, I've known Summer since I was younger than I am right now. Summer is an Atlanta-based actor and voice talent. Summer, you can bring Summer on out.
Hello.
Hey, girl, hey.
Hello. I probably should have written a longer bio now that I see everybody else.
No, you did. No, you sent me a longer one in my messages, but then I have like this little thing, and I couldn't pull it up on my phone, so don't be mad at me.
A-okay.
Is there anything you want to tell the people that we don't know?
My Venmo is also at Summer McCusker if anybody is feeling generous.
Yes. Listen, content creating ain't free, guys.
It's true. It's true. But also, you may see several orange cats crawl across my screen. They are also panelists.
Yes.
And they're very curious to share their thoughts. So
listen, we stand cats over here. I love kitties. All right. Next up, new panelist is Mario Bloomfield. Mario became a husband and father during quarantine. He's an artist and educator, and somewhere between a liberal and conservative. What's going on, Mario?
Hey guys, how you doing?
Doing great.
Welcome to the show. We're glad
Thank
to
you.
have you here. Do you have anything you want to share with our audience or our panelists here today?
Well, no. Well, I'm right now. I'm just winging it.
Right.
I've heard Alicia, that's my wife, on here quite a few times, and I always find myself chiming in certain topics. So she asked me if I could join in on this time around, so I figured it'd be fun.
It was your turn. That's okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Last but certainly not least is Ruth Darcy. Ruth is a libertarian slash conservative member of the Facebook group Politically Provoked and is new to online political discussion. She listens to a variety of independent media ranging from Ben Shapiro to Vosh and reads local news articles as well as what Google or Facebook recommends. Come on out, Ruth. Hey,
Hello,
how are you this evening?
I'm good.
We're really excited to have you here. Don't be shy. I know it's your first time. None
Mhm.
of us bite.
I
So,
might.
Contain
is
yourself,
there
Justin.
anything you want the audience or the people to know about you that I didn't cover before we get started?
Let's see. No, I'm just pretty new to political discussion on the internet. I literally just joined Facebook like 2 years ago,
Oh
so it's
wow.
been a crash course. Yep. So yeah.
Oh,
And see, I guess some people are giving their interests. I like airplanes. I'm an engineer, and I
oh
also
wow.
do a lot of kickboxing, weightlifting, a lot of various sports.
All right, vibes. Well, let's get this show on the road, guys. So, actually, before we get the show on the road, we need to pay some bills. So, we're going to run some commercials and then we'll be right back.
Hey everybody, my name's Chris.
I'm Duryea.
I'm Ricky Z.
Justin.
And Julian.
Have you heard about Anchor.fm? It's the easiest way to make a podcast. First off, it's free.
Oh, I love free, especially when we're talking creation tools that allow you to record and edit right from your phone and computer.
And Anchor will actually distribute your podcast for you. So as soon as you're finished recording, you can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many other platforms.
And you can make money off of your podcast with no minimum listenership.
It's basically a one-stop shop for everything you need. So head on over to anchor.fm and download the mobile app now. And make sure you come back and geek out with us. Live theater is back at the Springer Opera House. The Springer Outdoor Theater Festival presents Theater Under the Stars in a new outdoor venue located on site at the Springer Opera House. From hit Broadway musicals to classic children's tales, the festival includes 7 hit shows on stage now through June. For more information, please visit springeroperahouse.org.
All righty, guys, let's get this party started. Before we start, I want to remind everyone again to make sure you like, subscribe, share, comment, all that good stuff. You know that's what drives social media metrics. So yeah, help us out. All right, so our first, hey, what's up, King B? We're happy you made it.
Thanks. I had technical difficulties. My bad.
It's all good, man. Listen, that's how technology is sometimes. All right. So our first topic for this evening is actually something I started kind of noticing on Facebook kind of last week, but then I saw an article on NPR about it. And it's about the hotel and restaurant industry having issues finding workers. I don't know if you guys have seen on social media, there have been lots of, or if you go to a restaurant, you'll see a sign that says, please bear with us. We don't have enough workers. I've seen some places completely closed down for some hours because they don't have staff to fill that spot. Some people argue that is because people are on unemployment and are choosing not to work because, frankly, it can be more lucrative to maybe not work than to go to work. So what are you guys' thoughts about it? Who wants to go first? Go ahead, King B.
I think people, they see how the companies do, with Corona, it was like, now you don't have a job, so it's like, why go back to that,
that's fair. I have a buddy who owns a restaurant here in Columbus, and he was like, a lot of the reason why some people don't. He hasn't had any issue with hiring staff because he says during the pandemic we treated our staff well. Not only did we treat them well, we were able to give some of them raises. When we couldn't be open, we let them go on unemployment, and because we treated them correctly, they were more than willing to come back. What do you guys think? Who's next? Anybody? Go ahead, Justin.
So just to echo what Annette's saying down there, pay the workers a living wage and they'll come back. I mean, when you're making the living wage on an unemployment, but you're not making it work, and why the hell are you going to go to work? It's not about not wanting to work. It's about having your needs fulfilled. I think people actually enjoy working. I enjoy working. You get to go out, you get to talk to people.
Go ahead, Ruth.
I also think people might have shifted. They might have shifted their skill set, I suppose. I don't know about the restaurant industry, but definitely in some areas that are having trouble finding work. I saw an article on this actually the other day. It wasn't talking about restaurants. It was talking about manufacturing industry. A lot of skilled labor jobs. They're having a massive shortage trying to find workers, and I think a lot of it is when they had all the pandemic layoffs. I think people might have shifted to other areas that they thought were more profitable, and now it's hard to backfill that skill set.
Go ahead, Mario. I didn't mean to step on you earlier.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing she just said. I think also people just found their niche throughout this pandemic. I know a lot of people that start a lot of online stuff, particularly online t-shirts companies, or just sell things online, or they just started businesses. So I think this pandemic has been actually blessing.
So
go ahead, Justin, and then Summer.
Okay, sorry. So with this data point in particular, though, I think what they're studying is the workers that are still on unemployment, not the ones that are kind of switching gears and going to other career fields. It's the ones that were in the restaurant industry and they're still on unemployment rather than going back to work.
Go ahead, Summer.
I feel like a lot of folks feel like they've been done dirty. I mean, like they were saying, as far as the pandemic, you're making what, $7.25 an hour. Servers are making what, I think it's $2.13 an hour. And honestly, I don't blame them. Who would want to go back when you're essentially making more money on unemployment? I mean, it essentially says that there's something inherently wrong with the system when you're making more on unemployment than when you are actually working.
Agree. And I just want from what I understand of what I know, unemployment ain't a whole, that's still not a whole lot of money. It's just more money than you were getting before. But that just means before you were just getting pennies and scraps, or a lot of people were working one or two jobs, not just one job. So with unemployment, yeah, you may make more money on unemployment, but that's still, I mean, unless I think was it $400 a week?
It was $400 extra a week, yeah.
So $400. So I mean, after you pay bill, let's be clear, if you're single, maybe that's kind of okay. But if you're have children or any kind of people you must take care of in your household, that to me still isn't a lot of money. And that's kind of where I always I feel like we always want to pretend if someone is on unemployment or on any kind of welfare, that they're making out to be rich people, and they're
my boyfriend was laid off he was unemployed for about 6 months, and furloughed for a while before that throughout the pandemic. So yeah, so it was something, but it was pretty close to what he was actually making before with the additional money on top. But it was still not although I wanted to make another point, which was a lot of the restaurants have been really suffering because of the pandemic, because they haven't been able to open to full capacity, haven't been able to generate their usual business. They couldn't have their bars open, which hit a lot of the industries, a lot of the later the restaurants that are open later. So it's probably hard for them to. I can understand both sides, because it's probably hard for them to just suddenly start paying $15 an hour if you're a small restaurant, operates on a thin margin, especially if you're used to paying $10 an hour or something like that. So it's a very curious situation.
And the restaurant industry isn't set up. It's not really set up to be able to pay people $7 or $8 or $9 or $10 an hour. Like, is that echo coming from me, you guys? Is that me?
I could hear it too.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Oh, we're good. There, it's gone away.
Yeah, it's
Awesome.
gone.
The restaurant business model is not set up to be able to pay servers that much money. I mean, that kind of sucks, but from a business standpoint, I understand why restaurants can't just suddenly start paying their servers, way more money. All right, does anybody have any more thoughts on that, or should we move on to the next thing? All right, moving on we are. So, Idaho passed a transgender sports ban. So essentially, they banned anyone from competing in women's sports that weren't born female. I just want to, if I get my verbiage wrong, I want to sincerely apologize. Like, I'm not the most, what's the word I'm looking for?
Aware or knowledgeable?
Right. I don't. Right. I'm not.
Right.
I'm not the most eloquent when it comes to like this kind of an issue, but I did want to talk about it because I do find it interesting. And Caitlyn Jenner went on Sean Hannity's show. I think it was yesterday or Sunday, and she, she said that she believes that people who are born male should not be able to participate in women's sports. Do you guys agree, disagree? Where do you guys fall on the issue?
I agree.
Who was that? King B, was that you?
Yeah, that's an advantage. You're a man playing in a woman's sport. Like,
okay. Summer, I saw you had your hand up.
I think the answer is a lot more nuanced than a simple yes or no, because I think there's a lot of variables involved. Number one, what sport it is. Number two, at what time in their life these people were started to transition. They say the earlier that hormones or steroids or things like that are taken, the less likely it will really affect the outcome later. So, for example, if you are a woman assigned female at birth, and then transition early on, it's going to be much different than when a male transitions. And like I said, I think with the sports, is it running? Is it cycling? Is it wrestling? I don't think there's an answer. And I think once a certain age, and like if a full adult has matured, if you've matured and then you transition, it's a little bit of a different story.
Right. And I always find it interesting whenever these stories are out or being talked about. Most times it's always only framed around born at birth males who transition into females, but it kind of leaves out born as a female and then transitioning to a male. Does that like that they kind of get left out, or we don't think about it in the same terms? Am I making sense?
Yeah, I think that's because even if that happened, it really wouldn't present a serious disadvantage to to cisgender males already playing in that sport, because most likely they're not going to, if there's a transgender man who's competing in a men's sport, there's not going to be some significant difference at that point. It's just they're just going to rank with whoever else is in the sport. So, which I think the reason that doesn't come up almost lends itself to what King B said, which is that there's men and women, and we just kind of intrinsically know that the female going into the female who transitions to male and is going into the male sport isn't going to cause much of a concern, whereas that concern does exist for going the other direction.
Until she beats everyone's butt.
Okay, and I think what Summer said is a good point. I don't think there can't be what sport is it? Because there are some sports that women are better at or can be better at than men? Like, what if it's a sport? Is it a solo sport like golf or
Well, my
gymnastics?
question is, why does it have to be either or? Like, why does it have to be either we let them participate or we don't? Why don't we just start their own category? I mean, if you want,
That's a good idea. Just have a co-ed
I
league
mean,
that's like that runs
right, a
parallel and
co-ed,
everybody can compete.
right. And
That's what
then
I said
it
too.
doesn't matter if it's trans or not. You can enter that league knowing that you're going to be competing against men and women, naturally born women. I don't know if that's appropriate to say, but you know what I'm saying? You'll know you're going into a league that has both sexes either way. And
Yeah, and
I
that's
just feel like so often we're just like either or. It has to be this
mhm.
or that. Like, okay, let's just open up a new league. I mean,
I
I'm
agree with
ignorant
that.
on sports and stuff, but why not
I
just
agree
create
with that.
another
No,
category?
that makes total sense. Like,
I agree with that.
I totally
I
agree.
don't.
Open up a third league and just let it be an open league. Anybody can play. Just divide it by whatever makes sense for that
How
sport.
I
about
don't think that they
I
should
think
Hold on one second.
participate
Let's get
in.
Mario in real quick. Go ahead, man.
I don't think that should participate in they should mix because it's equivalent to me. The fact that you have to take medication to alter your hormones. That's to me is almost like you're taking steroids to a certain
Mm.
sense, and that's kind of an advantage. And in the Olympics, if you can't take any kind of enhancement to do track. So if you have a trans or they're taking hormones to change their testosterones or their but other people they're not taking anything. That's kind of unfair. So I don't think they should mix it at all. I think they should have their own thing. And if you
But
want,
if I think the argument against that or having their own thing would be it's kind of like the separate but equal argument that was used for black people and white people, right? So it's like, okay, it's cool if we separate you as long as what we give you is equal. But then when you do that, when you separate, what you give is not typically it's not usually equal. And I want to
I,
address a comment that was up here
I'd
earlier, and
be
then I'm gonna
I'm interested if you're comparing gender and race as being
yeah,
as intrinsically different.
and
That's
that's
a
when it gets
kind of a
dicey.
weird take.
That's when it gets dicey, and especially when it comes to black people, that's when it gets a little dicey when it comes to that topic because
I don't
our argument is always okay, like we are like this, like we are like this is something that you if you said okay you feel like you're in this body, okay, that's fine, that's something that you can say, all right, I want to do. As far as a black person, we didn't choose this skin. This is like we were here in this skin, like like this is not a choice, like we
What?
didn't choose this.
And so,
I mean
and so
I
your,
think
so you, sorry, I'm gonna
go ahead,
lose
Sam. No,
connection soon. To your point, what you just said is, I guess it comes down to, do you believe that there is an intrinsic, I guess, strength difference between men and women? Because if there is genetically, like to his point, there is no genetic, or you know what I'm saying, as far as what I
So
understand,
is it
difference between black and white or race or whatever. So it's
right.
like, do we as a society believe that there is actually men in some ways are stronger and women are in some ways are stronger? I do believe that. I believe
Yes, we're
that
naturally
the
stronger.
way that women are stronger is not the same that the way men are stronger. We have
yeah?
endurance, we have strength over the long term, but that's not how strength is measured in our society.
Hmm.
And so intrinsically, based on our society, women do seem at less of advantage than men. So I guess it just depends on how you're defining strength. And also, do you believe that there is really a genetic difference in strength between the sexes?
I want to
You know?
address something that Mario said a little bit earlier, and then I'll get you in, Summer. So you said that you compared, like, I was born black. Obviously, I had no choice in being black. The argument that someone who is transgender would make is they were born transgender. The idea is that I wouldn't, and it's the same. It's kind of the same thing with gay people. I didn't. No one chooses to be gay. At least that's what most gay people would tell you. I can't speak for every gay person. I'm not them. They ain't me. But more often than not, they'll tell you they were born that way. So I do think that I wasn't trying to intrinsically tie race and gender, but I do think human nature or how we in America do things in the course of our history, whenever we try to give someone something that's separate, it's typically not equal to what the other half is getting. And that hasn't just been with Black people, that's been with pay. Like we say, women should be paid equally. Women are not paid equally. They are still not paid equally. And 9 times out of 10, if we're being completely honest, they do the job 100 times better because they had to get to where they were. Go ahead,
I don't
Summer.
know.
I'm sorry.
Well, I think that's true if you compare across industry, but that's not necessarily true if you compare people in the same job, like in the same like area with similar experience and so forth. If you just take an average, yeah, because I know when because I'm working engineering, so I'm in a
Right.
pretty male dominated field, and I know when I hired into my job that like I was making the same because I talked to my coworkers, and I know I was making the same money as them when I hired in. So
Do you
I'm
think
pretty
you're the exception and not the rule, or do you think you're the rule?
I would think that I don't think that I wouldn't say I'm an exception. I mean, maybe if you
Okay.
took if you look 10 years in the future and if I've taken off 3 years to do other stuff and you know and a guy's continued promoting or whatever, maybe then you get a difference, but I wouldn't necessarily tie that to me being female. I would tie that to personal choices
Some of
or
it.
That's
you
it.
know
I want to get
but
Summer in, and then I'll go to you
that's
next,
a whole
Justin.
other conversation though, so I don't want to derail.
Go ahead, Summer. I know you said something earlier.
One thing that I also want to think about and that I'm curious to hear y'all's opinion about regarding this is at what point, as far as competing, like as far as competitive sports, a lot of kids, when they transition, they really just want to feel like they belong. They're part of a sports league. And it's the parents that want to do like, oh, we're competing, we're this, we're that. When in reality, a lot of kids just want to play on a team. So that's another thing that I want to also, that I'm curious about is like, at what age can it be like, sure, there could be like a co-op or something like that. But at what point do they say, okay, this is officially competitive? Like, are they saying no competitive sports or just like no sports? Like, I'm curious on where that line is.
That is a good point because there probably would be a difference between just having like a neighborhood soccer league versus like Olympic sports. There's a lot of difference in terms of how tight any kind of rules or competition is.
Go ahead, Justin.
I'm sorry.
I want to get Justin in real quick.
So as far as this argument it goes, I feel like they're taking one small issue out of the whole transgender debate, and they're focusing on it because you can get people on both sides to kind of agree. Well, men shouldn't play in women's sports, so they're using it to fuel the bigotry, and that's where I get kind of like there's a bigger issue here, and we're focusing so much on sports, and then the last thing I want to say is Caitlyn Jenner is the transgender Candace Owens. Done.
I completely agree, but I like the point that Summer made, which is like kids just want to belong. Like I think maybe it's the adults that are taking it more serious and more deeply than, and I think that's in general. I think kids don't take things as deeply as adults do across the board with everything. And also what Justin said about the intent behind it. Like maybe if I do agree with some of the logic behind it, I know the intent is not the best interest of the children. The intent is for you to use it as a wedge issue and to kind of stick it to trans people because that's supposed to be because you get what I mean. I agree with Justin on that point. Anybody else have anything else to say about this? Or
it's just dicey, man, because like say for example, like naturally boys grow a little taller than girls. So say for example you have someone who was born a guy and they want to transition to a female and they're going to play into a women's sports league, and he's just naturally tall. Like how would you play that? It's just kind of dicey because
I mean,
he's
I
just
think
naturally a taller person.
but sometimes girls are born naturally tall. Like look at the WNBA. That's a bunch of naturally tall women.
Yes,
And like
but on average,
and like
more
for me,
men
I'm
grow
a
taller.
very wafy, like clearly I'm not the most masculine dude in the world. I'm 5'9", I weigh 160 pounds. Like I've never been good at sports. That was not my bag. So it's like plenty of women could beat me in sports. Like so I don't think that gender
Me too.
I don't think that gender always will necessarily dictate who will be good at a sport. even on like a genetic level, right? Like sometimes some girls may have more testosterone in their body naturally than boys do, depending on what age they
And I,
are.
I was gonna touch on that because, like in the Olympics, Flojo, she got caught with steroids, and the whole point of taking steroids is you put more testosterone in your body, so you move faster. So you have a transgender taking testosterone. That's what I'm saying. Like, where do we draw the line? Where it's like, okay, is this illegal? Like, do we like turn a blind eye to it because you're trans? But when other regular people take it, we're gonna say, okay, no, it's wrong for you. That's why I say it gets a little dicey, you know?
All right.
I
So,
think
go ahead, Justin. I'm sorry.
I think that's the whole point. Is it's a dicey situation, so you can kind
Mm-hmm.
of get lost in all of it, and then there's no progress that can be made because everybody's so lost in the semantics, rather than just let's
By
have
the way, I agree
transgender
with you.
rights and then
I agree with you on Bruce Jenner. I think he's a very, 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 very like traffic man person.
Yo, let's
Like
not misgender her. Caitlyn
Caitlyn.
chooses Caitlyn. She is a she. Those are her pronouns. I want to be respectful. I always say we should always respect somebody, whatever they want to be called, whatever pronouns they want to use, whatever name they want to use. I ain't trying to be disrespectful to anybody. So the next thing, I'm actually watching CNN right now in front of me, and so I'm kind of pulling from this. So apparently Florida just signed a new voting restriction thing into law, kind of following behind Georgia. And so this is my issue with these voting laws that these states are passing. So you have states like Georgia and Florida who've had Republican governors, Republican state legislators that have controlled them for years upon years. You could have been, if there was an issue with the voting, you've had years to pass voting laws, years. But you choose to pass voting laws, specifically like in Georgia, when you lose 2 Senate seats to Democrats. Florida, you choose to pass voting laws when you see that the trend in your voting totals is trending more towards Democrat and Republican. So, do we really think that these Republican lawmakers actually care about voter security, or is it really about restricting people's right to vote?
Restricting
Who wants to
people's
go
right to vote.
first? Go ahead, Mario. Go ahead.
It's all restricting people's rights to vote. They're just upset at what happened last November. That's all.
I think they're virtue signaling.
Yes.
I think they're kind of virtue signaling to their base to try to turn out the people, because maybe if all the drama hadn't happened and people had actually come out to vote on the Republican side, it would have been different. So
why would they come out to vote? Because literally Donald Trump was telling them months before the election is rigged.
Yeah, exactly. And he had one of the big
Kinda
story there,
were.
in my opinion, is that there was all that drama. Trump was talking about the election fraud and just wouldn't stop talking about it. So there was like tens of thousands of Republican voters that were like, "Well, I'm not going to show up to vote because we'll show you," or something. And then
it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, and so I think it's mostly. I mean, most of the restrictions. I mean, they added restrictions that I think it was like you had to show voter ID to vote by mail, but they have that in Colorado and other states anyway. So I mostly think it's just virtue signaling to their base.
Go ahead, King B. You said you had something to say.
Oh yeah. So when the Democrats said Trump cheated, it was a thing. But when he said they're cheating, he's delusional. I don't understand.
They had evidence though for Trump, man. Like,
but let's be clear. When Donald
evidence as in like Facebook memes,
let's be fair. When Donald Trump won, the sitting Democratic president, Barack Obama, said he won. Hillary conceded the election like 3 days later. When they went to certify the election results, they were certified by the Democrats, all of whom were not fans of this motherfucker. I'm not supposed to be doing all that. I'm hosting.
There was one representative that voted against it.
There's always going to be one, like on both sides, always going to be one. I think you see you didn't see in mass on the Democratic side, from what I saw, people saying the election was fraudulent. I think you see on the Republican side in mass, not only in the actual Republican electorate, but even elected officials saying this was fraud, or just calling into question that it was
the
fraudulent.
Republican side definitely came up with a cooler story. I will give them that.
The thing with the Democrats is when Trump won, there were more evidence for him colluding with Russia than there were evidence for voter fraud that he was claiming. He was just pulling things out of thin air. But with him, you had so many guys that were indicted in his cabinet. It was ridiculous. So they actually had more evidence for Russia collusion. As a matter of fact, Robert Mueller, the chief prosecutor that did the independent investigator that did the Russia case, he vaguely put in this statement that, you know what, he did collude with Russia, but we can't really indict a sitting president. Plus, this would just make our country look almost like a third world country. So we're just going to go ahead and turn a blind eye to it. But if you guys want to proceed to impeach him, there's evidence here. And I remember that people were upset at the Democrats because they were saying that, listen, he's saying you can impeach him, but they knew that nothing would have happened because the House was packed with Republicans, so they wouldn't have voted against it. And at the time, the House of Representatives was packed with Republicans as well. So you had Republicans on both sides. So that's why the Democrats didn't go and impeach him the first time. But yeah, there way more evidence of Russia collusion than there were for his voter fraud. You were just talking out of thin air.
Now, is everybody? Go ahead, Justin.
No, go ahead. I can go after you.
No, you go ahead, buddy. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So my whole thing with this issue is, if you look at Georgia, and then I believe it was 2018, Stacey Abrams was up for election, and there's Brian Kemp that was running against her. He was the I forget what his position was.
I think he was Secretary of State, I think.
So he was the one actually in charge of the election itself.
The election. Yeah, Secretary of State.
So then
he was Secretary of State.
So in 2020, Stacey Abrams had put together a brilliant campaign to stop voter suppression. Because that's what, had that whole situation gone differently, Stacey Abrams would have been governor of Georgia, hands down. There's no doubt in my mind. So she took that where she got wronged, and she's like, I'm not going to let this shit happen anymore. Voter suppression needs to end. So she makes all these moves to end voter suppression in Georgia, and Democrats win. So now they're like, oh shit, if we don't have some form of voter suppression, Democrats are going to hold power in Georgia, and we're fucked. We're going to lose our power here. And that's just it's political game, but they're going to.
What's the suppressing element of it?
Okay, go ahead, Summer.
So I actually looked. I wasn't sure exactly which laws we were talking about. I just knew that new voting laws were passed. So I actually just pulled it up, and it says it restricts the use of absentee ballot drop boxes to the early voting period. It adds new identification requirements for requesting such ballots, and requires voters to reapply for absentee ballots in each new general election cycle. Previously, Florida voters only had to apply once every 2 election cycles.
The suppression part is limiting the poll hours, especially around hours that certain communities are known to come out and vote. So there's a whole like Souls to the Polls where Black churches go on Sundays and get like a lot of voter turnout on Sundays for their community. Huh?
Didn't that part not make it into the final bill? I did hear about the Sunday part, but I don't think that part actually got passed, but I could be wrong.
I know that they were removing polls.
I was going to say they were also not making it illegal for people to give water and food to people in line.
Right.
They were getting
so if you have certain districts that are outlined and gerrymandered a certain way, you're going to be in line a lot longer because you have longer. So the way they've created the actual districts is suppression. But now they're so that in going way back is suppression. But now, we've come up with things to overcome that, like being able to hand out water and food and stuff at the polls that are overcrowded. and now that's not that's illegal.
No,
I
what
think
it was I think what it
go ahead,
was
go ahead.
they made it illegal for groups to give water out at the polls. They can still give it to the pollsters, and then the poll workers will give it out to people. It's just not people. I personally think that law was kind of silly because, like, if you're out there for 6 hours to vote, I don't think you're gonna completely change your mind on who you're voting for if somebody walks up and gives you a bottle of water. So personally, I think that's kind of stupid. But I don't know. I think people will still be able to get stuff if they're there. And they
They're
also
just
added,
grasping at straws.
I think it added I think they added 4 days of early voting. So they extended the early voting period in order to make, um, in order to make there be more availability from
They need to
from
put
what I
more
heard.
They need to put more voting precincts. There's no reason why I should have as many voting precincts in the county that I live in as the same county as Atlanta. When my county has 5,000 people and Atlanta has 4 million.
I think
Yeah,
I guess
I agree with that.
my biggest issue is, like, let's take all of the actual details of the bill out, right? Let's, because those are kind of immaterial to the point I'm going to make. I think it sends, if Republicans truly want to be a bigger tent party, specifically they want to embrace black voters and bring black voters in. What you don't do is, when the first black man elected to the Georgia Senate post Reconstruction, the first thing you do isn't to pass new voting laws, especially when nobody, like, you had no issue with the, if there were no issues with the voting laws when Donald Trump won, then why did you need to pass them? It feels like either A, you're trying to signal something to your base, or it communicates to me that you have an issue with me. And specifically, when you look at where these specific things affect, they affect counties like Atlanta that are heavily black, or heavily metropolitan areas in Republican or purple states that are typically more liberal leaning because they have a higher black population. Maybe that wasn't the intent, but that's just what it looks like. And to me, optics is everything. Like, maybe that wasn't your intent, but from the outside looking in, it seems like you have an issue with people who look like me voting, and you're trying to stop people who look like me from voting.
Also, Ron DeSantis, the Florida governor, after the election, he was like, "Oh, Florida had the smoothest, cleanest election. There was no nothing." So it's just, the timing is just very strange. How all of a sudden it's all like, "Oh, but we need to make it harder for people to vote."
Well, I think also Florida had that the huge issue in, what was it, 2000, when, like, it just came down to Florida and they had the big recounts during the Gore election. So I'm pretty sure Florida had already, like, overhauled their system because that whole thing was such a mess. So
I think that was with the butterfly ballots, where you could actually fill it in, and there was, I don't know if it was like the actual, I don't know what kind of, if they use paper or if they use
I think it was paper, but
there were, like, you punched holes in paper, and there were, like, I just remember
people putting it in the middle.
Right. There was this thing about hanging chads. And so it was like, when you punched that paper and, like, the little whole thing didn't punch all the way, or there was a little piece of paper still left.
Yeah, but basically their whole system was messed up then. So I think it probably got an overhaul a lot more recently than other systems to kind of clean up those issues.
Yes, Ed Rogers, hanging chads. I knew I didn't, like, dream that up in my head. All right, I think we have time for one more, like, current event topic. Let me see. Well, this isn't necessarily political, but I'm just curious as to what you guys think. So, I watched this show called Drag Race. It's right. Someone's like, I know what you're gonna say. So essentially, these two contestants from a reality show got into a fight.
I mean, if we want to go in, we can go in on it.
Sam, mute yourself.
Sam, I'm gonna mute you, friend. Don't be mad. Oh yeah, she good. Okay. So essentially, there were these two contestants on a reality show called RuPaul's Drag Race, and they got into a fight on social media. The fight started because one contestant was doing, like, reviews and critiques of the show, and they critiqued the other contestant, and that person didn't like it very well. And so that made me think, like, in general, do we live in a culture where we can critique things without people being upset or taking it the wrong way? And I think about it because even if you look at like Top Model, the TV show, right? Every other month, Tyra Banks is getting dragged on Twitter because of something she said or did on Top Model. And so I wonder if we as a society have kind of gotten to a place where we can't have competition shows where you have to judge somebody based on looks or based on anything. Do you guys agree, disagree?
I think if you are going on a reality television show, you are kind of signing yourself up for some form of criticism. Now, if I were to just start a podcast and a show about how much like just spilling the tea on Tristan and everything that he does when you don't ask for it, then I think that calls for a little bit like, okay, maybe not. However, I think if you are putting yourself on television, you're signing NDAs, you're doing all this stuff. I think you should, not saying that you shouldn't be upset by critiques, but I think that you should go in with an open mind and know the fact that you are likely going to be critiqued. And if you have the personality that can't necessarily handle constructive criticism, then maybe putting yourself on a TV show or in the spotlight is not right for you.
Agreed. Anybody else?
I think we live in a hypersensitive society right now where people are going to find a reason to be offended sometimes. You can be a part of a show, and I just think that if you're going to put yourself out there, you have to make up your mind to have a thick skin, or like the earlier comment, just don't bother at all. But I do I do think that in the era of social media, people are hypersensitive, hypersensitive. And it doesn't take much at all for a person to be offended.
Too sensitive.
Devil's advocate, I do think sometimes what can happen is, especially if you're talking about famous people who are talking about each other, they have fans on Twitter, on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, and sometimes fandoms can be a lot more mean than the person that they're fans of. So I don't know, like if you go on like Twitter, right, and you have Nicki Minaj fans, or the Barbs as they're called, they may say some crazy things that Nicki Minaj would never say. But then I think sometimes we maybe attribute what fans say that are vulgar to the people that they're supporting. Does that make sense? And so sometimes it maybe makes it sting worse because you feel like you have this, it's not just one person critiquing you or one person coming after you. It's like the entire internet, so to speak, coming after you.
I understand how that can be.
I like when Cardi B told Tommy Lauren she was gonna dog walk her.
Listen, but don't nobody like Tommy. Like I don't like collectively. I don't think Republicans even like Tommy Lauren. Like, no.
She's a brat. She's like an entitled
and she's
brat.
not even. And she's not, for someone who wants to be a conservative, like aficionado or a commentator, she's not very well informed on Republican policy or Republican agenda. Like that's just kind of always been odd to me. Like you got to be more than just blonde and pretty. Like that ain't gonna cut it, because there are blonde pretty girls who actually who are smart and know things about conservatism and their positions and etc.
Thank you.
But there is people that look at her and they're just like jaw on the floor, like they're not even listening to a word she's saying. They're just there.
I think she's more of a troll than anything else. She's like Candace Owens. I just think she trolls because she wants to get a platform. She wants to be put on. She wants her own show. She wants to elevate, and I feel like she feeds on negative stuff. So I think if we ignore her, like when black people ignore Candace Owens for the most part, she wants to come on those black platforms to have a conversation, and no one is willing to give it to her. And she claims it's because I'm right. No, it's not. That's not the case. We just don't want to give you a platform. So I think Tommy Lauren is just a troll. I just think
now do to kind of wrap it back to what we're talking about. Do you guys think that if someone like Tommy Lauren or Candace Owens has a valid criticism, are we not willing to hear it because so much of what they do is trolling? So when they do say something that may kind of make sense or have a valid place in discourse, we kind of discount it off the bat because it's coming from them?
Unfortunately, yeah. unfortunately,
But
because anybody can tell the truth.
Go ahead, Justin.
No, I'm good. I was gonna open up a can of worms, and I don't want to do it.
No, bro, please open up the cans of worms. That is what we are here for.
So if you want to take away the power of their voice, then you shouldn't give a shit when Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion want to make out on stage. Let them do whatever the fuck they want. Don't criticize them.
I mean, I think like specific with that kind of thing, right? Like I think it's a fair criticism to say that perhaps on network television.
But it was like 8:00 at night, and it was towards the end of the show. So
you know what? Actually, I don't even want to say that because I always say if you have children, it's not the TV's job to raise your children. It's not society's job to raise your children. It's your job to raise your children. You don't have to let your children watch the Grammys or the Oscars or any of that stuff. It's on you to control what your kids watch. So actually, you're right.
I agree. And on the same token, is it on parents to decide whether or not their kids should take transgender hormones or?
Well, see, well, that's a good point. I think that from my understanding, I'm not trans, so I'm only basing this on what I've seen and what I know. Typically speaking, most times I know you can't get an actual gender reassignment surgery when you're under the age of 18. Like doctors won't do that. I think the most you can do, they'll do hormone blockers and they'll do like
blockers, I think, is what
right. But essentially if you were born a man, it'll stop you from producing, I think, testosterone. If I'm incorrect, somebody on Facebook, please correct me in the comments. And so on and so forth. I think that's okay if the person, I don't think the parents are choosing it for the children. My assumption is the parents have gone to the doctor with the child, there's a therapist involved, and this is a conversation between the teenager, the parent, and the doctor. I don't think that parents can tell kids what they can do. I think that everyone has autonomy of their own body.
So you think that they can control what?
Wait a minute, you don't think parents can tell kids what to do?
Yeah,
I think that children should always have autonomy of their own bodies. I saw a thing on TikTok.
So if a kid doesn't want to go to sleep, should they just be allowed not to?
I think within reason. Like obviously you can't do what you want to do,
Tristan,
but I think you should be.
I'm playing with you because
I know you're messing with me,
and things can get taken out of context. But I get what you're saying. I do agree. I mean, I think in parenting, it's our job to not what to do or make kids what to do a certain thing, but to give them choices and say, hey, if you choose this is your consequence. If you choose this, your consequence. It's about teaching kids how to make good decisions, but a lot of times parenting doesn't come down to that. So
you actually brought up a great point. I think because of where we are as a society, if one of your children wants to go through and do transgender, you need to have a conversation with them about the social consequences of that. Like, hey, I support you in doing this, but society isn't going to be as accepting as I am of this. So you need to be ready and you need to be prepared mentally to handle what society's going to put on you.
That's well placed, my friend. That is well placed. And the thing is, when you talk to your young child, or will they have the mental capacity to understand where you're coming from? Because my mom sit down and try to explain certain things to me as a kid, and my father. And at that age, when I was 18, my father tried to explain to me certain things, and it went over my head. And when I hit 28, 29, my brain finally developed. When your brain developed at 25, I'm like, whoa, that's what he meant. So I just think, again, that's another dicey moment right there. Like, yes, you're explaining it to them, and they may say, yes, I'm sure. But when they hit 29, 30,
real quick, Sam, I want to address this comment down here because I saw it. I want to spread some knowledge. So first of all, gender and sexual orientation are two very different things. They are. Gender expression, orientation, two different things. So no, most trans kids don't end up as garden variety gays. In fact, at least like I from what I've seen, you have trans people who male to female who date females, who date males, who date other trans people. Like it depends on that person. There's not, those two things are not related. And yes, Alicia, I too want to know, what is a garden variety
I was
gay?
gonna ask that
Am
question
I
next.
Yeah, I'm like, what the hell is that?
I was gonna ask
am
that.
I
I
love how every time we start defining gender outside of biological sex, we have to go to gender stereotypes, which
right?
that makes me a little uncomfortable, but
And some people don't identify as male or female. Some people identify as non-binary. Some people they may present as male or female, but they don't necessarily identify or use those other pronouns. Again, you don't know unless someone tells you, and I would never assume to know how someone chooses to define themselves, and I would never tell someone how they're supposed to define themselves.
That's a fact.
I'm an alien.
Yes, Alicia. And Alicia, when you find out what a garden variety gay is, please come back here and in the comment section let us know. Because as a gay man, I don't even know. I go to all the gay meetings. Nobody has told me. All right, well, guys, we're gonna take a quick break and then we will be back with our
Can,
main
can,
topic.
can I
Oh, hold
just say
on.
something? Sorry,
Go
real
ahead,
quick
Sam.
on
Go
that.
ahead.
I just want to say, like, think about, like, as a parent, I struggle with this because I really do want my child to feel completely loved and completely accepted, right? But if my 15-year-old comes to me and says, I want to transition, not even on the basis of like what I think, on the basis of just you physically being so young, and like to Mario's point, your brain does not fully develop till you're 25. You can't drink alcohol till you're 21. You can't get tattoos. You can't get piercings in America till you're 18. Like, those are things that are physically changing your body, right? So I would want my child to know, like, I love them and I accept them. But I do think, I mean, there are definitely things that as a child, before I was 18 or 21 or 25, that I was like, I want to do this and I want to, and I should be able to do this. And when I got 25, or when I became a parent, or, certain things I started understanding, there are certain rules out here for a reason. Like, you literally, there are decisions that you make as a child and as a teenager and as a young adult before your brain is fully developed, that you might not necessarily want to be permanent. And I don't know a lot about the hormones and the transition and all that, but you, as far as I understand, you are physically changing your body. And so is that a change that you're making in a very hormonal state because you're going through your period and you're going through puberty and there's peer pressure and you feel this way or you don't? Or are you really making that decision because and it's not just like saying you're gay or you like someone or you like the same sex or not. This is physically changing your body that, to me, as far as I understand, it can have lasting effects. So it's like, at what point are you still accepting and loving, but at what point do you still, like, kind of the play between, hey, yeah, we should let our children kind of make these choices, because as parents, it's up to us to teach them how to make good choices, not necessarily force them to make good choices. So part of our job is to teach them how to make good choices. But what's the balance between loving and accepting them, but also saying, I'm sorry, you're just not old enough for that yet?
I will also
As
say that
adults,
they
man,
could
we need to
also
understand that.
stop taking the hormones or things like that if it is not a good fit. You could always stop if it's too early, they don't like the way that it affects their body, things like that. So, I mean, as far as some of the permanent changes that Tristan was talking about, as far as being 18 years old, I can absolutely understand that. But as far as like, if they want to, if it's a female to male, if they want to start taking testosterone and all of a sudden it's changing their body and they say, whoa, I don't like this, they could always stop. That's not a permanent change.
Well, I mean, what
Also,
effects
man,
does that have lastingly? Because I know there are certain things that, as a kid, you should not do, because it will affect your brain development. And obviously hormones aren't the same as like drugs or alcohol or something like that. But if you are literally physically
That's what I
changing
wanted
your
to talk
body,
about.
especially at such a tender age, what, I mean, even if they stop, what lasting effects does that have? Maybe none. I don't know. And this might be just my ignorance on the subject, but I also know bodies, and I know, at some point, anytime you start altering your body, what naturally is happening, you're gonna have some lasting effects. And maybe
I
I'm wrong.
mean, and
I
to your
I
point,
think
Sam, what
that's
if it's
why.
like permanent decision of removing the genitalia and you want to go back and you
Well, you
can't,
can't.
like,
You
you
can't.
know?
Well, I know you can't. I know if you're under 18, no doctor who has a license is going to give you a gender reassignment surgery. That legitimately is just not going to happen. I think when you talk about taking hormones, I think that is a conversation that happens with a doctor and parents and the child. There was a comment earlier. The person said, it was Lance Johnson. He said, I feel if a child is open enough and mature enough to tell a parent that they want to change sex, it should be at least considered. I completely agree there needs to be a real conversation with a therapist. And also, you don't have to jump to hormone therapy. Like, it could just be, I think, like what Dwayne Wade is doing with Zaya, right? Like, she is just presenting as a woman, to my knowledge. Like, they haven't told their personal business, but he is allowing her to express herself outwardly the way that she feels comfortable and is encouraging that. And you can do that without necessarily doing anything medically. But I
Yeah, I
do,
mean,
Alicia made a good point.
you can change how someone presents by just changing hair, clothes, makeup,
Right.
all that stuff, which is obviously not permanent. They can change that later if they want.
And also, there's nothing wrong with just being a parent and just telling your child, putting your foot down and say no. Like, I mean, I know it's unpopular, but you're grown up, you're an adult. Like, you can say no. And I know, people
But
may do it to you, but
don't you think that, don't you think if your child came to you and said, not even I want to take hormones, let's just say your child says, you know what, I feel like a woman or I feel like a man and I want to dress this way. Don't you think it's a bit, wouldn't you be afraid your child would resent you if you just told them they can't dress the way they want to?
I will have a
Simply just,
conversation.
I just send them to therapy.
Yeah, I will have a
Send
conversation
them
with
to
them. Say, okay,
therapy. Go talk
this
to
is what
somebody.
this is, but I'm
What's
not gonna
wrong?
say I'm sorry. I'm not gonna like do the Dwayne Wade thing and say, okay, I'm gonna hear you out and follow your direction here. Like, ultimately, again, like, I'm an adult here. Like, I birthed you and I've been on this earth longer. I'm gonna have a conversation with you and let you know what's going on. And said, okay, this is what comes with this. And right now, I don't think you're ready for this right now. You may feel like this, or maybe years later, it might change. Now, if you're 18, 19, and you still feel this way, then we can talk about it. But I'm not gonna go right away at 12, 13 and say yes now. Like, I mean,
I
I'm the
think
parent, they're not the parent.
you make a good point when you say, I do think you should be honest with your children about if you make this choice, this is what you're going, like, this is what the reality of doing this is going to be in your life. Like, that is a conversation you should have because that's the reality of the world. I think where maybe we may part ways is I don't think you should ever deny someone, specifically if it's not anything medical, right? Like if you're a child just saying, I want to dress this way.
They want to express how they
I
feel
would,
on the inside.
right. I think that's when you don't let your child have ownership of their body, I think that can lead to problems down the road as an adult, not feeling like you have ownership of your own body,
One
from
thing
what
I've
I've
always wondered,
heard.
this is something I've wondered about is when kids say they feel like they're the other gender, and I've seen like a few stories where parents explain it like, okay, their son decided to put on dresses, et cetera, et cetera. So it seems like now that's probably not the case for everybody, so that's probably just the few cases I was seeing. But it seems like why are we suddenly jumping to the thing that oh, if a little boy puts on a dress, that means he must be a girl. Couldn't just be a boy who likes to wear dresses. Like
Dresses,
it's
Could
it's
be.
almost
especially,
it's
It could
almost
be.
like
yes.
we have to reinforce gender stereotypes that feminism has been trying to, you
Thank
know,
you.
erode for like what 50, 100 years. I mean,
Well,
I grew up
it
conservative.
goes against.
It goes I grew up conservative Christian, so I was I was I had remarks made when I started wearing like civil air patrol uniforms. Oh, you look like a boy, things like that. So it's almost like you're saying, well, you were right. I guess maybe I was a boy. I mean, obviously I'm not. I don't identify that
Well,
way, but
I guess
it's
that's.
and it's an oversimplification of it. So I acknowledge that, but it
No,
feels
you're
like
fine.
if we lose the anchor of biological sex being something that we take as general reality, then we have to basically go back to gender stereotypes to define what is male and female. And I mean, do you really want people to do that? I mean,
All right, hold on real quick,
I
because Alicia, hold
I
on one
just
quick,
want to,
Sam.
okay.
Real quick, Sam. Let me go to King B because Alicia wants to hear what King B has to say. After King B, we'll do Sam, and then we'll wrap up and go to the main topic.
I was gonna stay out of this one, but
no, bro, that's not an option. Your opinion is welcome here.
I don't know. I mean, my son, if you want to wear dresses, go buy your own clothes, bro. Like, I'm not going to shop for you dresses, man. It's not happening. Get a job, buy your own clothes. You can wear what you want.
When you're 18, right?
Yeah.
18, 19, when you can afford it, right? Yeah,
You
that's
can
what I'm
afford
saying.
it. When you
Right now,
afford to buy
as an
dresses,
adult, this is what it
you
is,
go
right?
buy
You
you
know,
a
I gotta
dress.
pay the bill. Like, I'm the parent, you don't run the house, what I do?
No.
All right, Sam, you go ahead. You get the final thought on this one, Sam.
Okay, so my final thought on this is, I guess it seems counter logical, right? The whole basis, or as far as I understand it, for people transitioning is they feel like wherever they're not who they're supposed to be, right? Based on what society tells us men and women are supposed to be. So if I, as a woman, born a woman, don't want to wear dresses and don't want to wear skirts, and I like pants and I like this and I like trucks and I don't like Barbie dolls. Now I'm saying, okay, well, I don't identify as a girl or, as a woman. I identify as a boy based on gender standards and how society defines gender. But I guess what I'm trying to wrap my head around is, you're saying I'm breaking out of this society norm because I don't feel how society tells me I should feel. And yet I'm still defining myself by those same standards when I transition. And that is, I think, I'm sorry, I don't know your name because I'm driving and my phone, your name is so little,
I
but
think
over in
Ruth
the
is
corner.
Which one?
Yeah, Ruth.
Yeah, like that's what I'm trying to, and I had a conversation with my friend about this, like, okay, if we're gonna break gender norms and we're just gonna say, hey, let's just let people be who they are, why do we now then have to redefine the trans people or whoever's transitioning by? I mean, it's kind of like a catch-22. Like, you're breaking out of the system to just become a part of the redefine yourself by the same system.
I think when you said let people be who they are, we're gonna leave it right there and pay some bills and be right back.
We are here today on site at one of our projects. I'm a developer and entrepreneur in real estate. And what excites me most is seeing the properties come from the ground up. In development, you have to grade the ground first, you have to pour the footers, and make sure that you're building on the solid foundation. That is very important because you want to make sure that your structure can be supported by the foundation that you're laying. That's the same thing that happens in life. You want to make sure that you're starting with a solid foundation in education. That's why we host our educational services, to make sure that you are going in the right direction to learn, to build, and so that you can grow too your real estate portfolio. All of these things and more, we provide resources at itsjessicamyers.com.
All right, we are back. So tonight's main topic is Is America racist? So in case people did not see on the news, the reason why this became a question was because after President Biden's State of the Union, Tim Scott did the Republican rebuttal, and Tim Scott exclaimed emphatically that America is not racist. He then, in the same breath, went on to say that liberals had called him racist things, but whatever. And then a few days later, Kamala Harris, I think she did an interview on GMA, and she also said this phrase, America is not racist. But then she then went on to say America does have a history of racism that it needs to come to a reckoning with, et cetera, et cetera. So the question is America racist?
Is it like
Yes.
it? Is everybody in America racist? No. Are the systems in America racist? Yes.
But no, I agree. But the question is America racist?
Yes, we're a racist country.
Okay. I think to start off, I think that phrase specifically, is America racist, is a very loaded phrase. Like, I think it's.
Here are my thoughts.
I don't know how
on
I feel
this.
about it. Go ahead, Summer.
So I don't necessarily think that when I say, like, me personally, like, I think, yes, America is racist. When I say that, I don't necessarily mean that all or even most Americans are consciously racist. I think ultimately this country was founded by racist and white supremacists. And so that early wealth of this country was essentially built on the backs of people who were enslaved. And even though racism has evolved and maybe become less blunt, I wouldn't say it's become less effective. But that systemic racism has come through with in our schools, offices, police departments, just primarily because white people occupy most positions of decision-making power. And so most other folks have a hard time getting ahead. So that's what I have to say on that.
All right. I'm going to go to the black men if that's cool with y'all, because I'm just curious as to what they have to say. Mario and then King B.
America is very racist. Everybody in America is not racist. I believe that we are reaching a turning point now where people are getting aware of it, and we're having discussions like this one. And the hard thing is that those who are willing to listen. Some people, their racism goes so deep they don't want to listen, because then that would mean that we'll open up their eyes to let them know that they owe Black Americans an apology or reparations, and they don't want to address that. So some people, they're willing to talk about it. Some people aren't willing to talk about it. But yes, America is very racist. The system is racist. If you think of how America was founded, they came to a country and that had indigenous people, and you took their land on the rape, genocide, the whole shebang. That was founded on racism. And the idea that because my skin color is different, I'm automatically superior to you. And they wrote laws based on that. And those laws right now are still in effect, and we're living off of those laws. Like, that's the foundation of this country. So it is very racist, and I think that I'm happy that we're waking up and we are seeing it. Now, when Kamala Harris and Tim Scott, leaders, are going on a public platform and saying it's not racist, that's when it's dangerous, because you have leaders are saying that are in denial. And that's when you have people that can change the law and say, see, they're saying it's not racist, so therefore we should leave those laws. That's when it gets
real
dicey.
Quick. Maxwell, I'm gonna let Justin answer your question, Maxwell. I'm gonna go to King B, and then we'll get in Sam and Ruth, and then go back to Justin. Go ahead, King B. You there? I'm
okay.
Yeah, we can hear you. You good?
Yes, America is very, very racist. I experienced it a lot. I was in the Marine Corps, and being black man in the Marine Corps, you automatically have a target on your back. They see you as a thug. First thing, they're ready to burn you for whatever, the system is put in places to keep us down. I mean, if America wasn't racist, Black Lives Matter wouldn't be a thing. You know?
Okay. Let's go, Ruth.
You can let Sam go first. I'll go last.
Go ahead, Sam.
Some of y'all know because y'all didn't see me on here before, so y'all know how I feel. But let's just be clear. I think, first of all, one of the biggest issues is people are so sensitive to the word racist. It does not mean that you consciously hate Black people and want to like hang them from trees. It just means you have subconscious beliefs that were beat into your head because you were socialized and raised in a country that is founded on racism. And I think if we can start to destigmatize that word and people can start to admit, yes, me asking to touch a Black person's hair in a certain way, that's racist. Me doing certain things, like I've been out in like I'm always with Black people. Like it's rare I'm with white people. So like I'll be going to a restaurant, and this has happened more times than I can count. I'll be with my girlfriend, like a friend that's a girl. I'll be with my girlfriend. She's actually taking me out for brunch or something. And but she's Black. And the waiter will come and address me and be like, hey, how y'all doing? But look straight at me and not even address the other person I'm with. But it's like, but she gonna be giving your tip. Little do you know, she's actually the one that's gonna be giving your tip. And so I think fundamentally, you cannot separate America from its roots, from nothing. I don't care what America, a house. I mean, when you look at building a house, the first and most important thing is the foundation. And so if the foundation is messed up from the beginning, if it is inherently racist from the beginning, you're going to continue to see that pervasive and persuasive throughout the rest of the history of that, whatever it is that is being built on top of it. So to tease out the difference in America and racism, you can't. This country is founded on it. And whether you want to believe it or not, because you were born in America and raised and socialized in America, you're a racist. And it doesn't mean that you want to go kill a Black person and hang them from a tree. It just means you have some really harmful, subconscious, small beliefs about Black people that aren't true. And until we can really start to say, hey, this is what's going on, and yes, I have these negative opinions that I don't even want to have, but I do, we're not going to get anywhere. If white people don't stop being sensitive about this, we're not going to get anywhere.
I think every person has unconscious bias, whether or not they want to.
And that's to my sorry, one more point, and that's to my point. I say this all the time. It's not just white people that are racist. Like I will argue that anybody raised in America has some sort of unconscious racism, even if they're Black, against Black people, because you cannot be raised in this country without having certain unconscious beliefs until you consciously start addressing them, whether you Black, white, Asian, or whatever.
I want to address this comment that was up here real quick. This from Charles Vanek.
Yes,
there
please.
are Black people in the highest spheres of authority in this country right now, and we're a racist country. Can someone please explain that to me? Yes, I can. Very simply. First of all, just because someone is the exception doesn't mean they're the rule. Barack Obama became the first Black president in spite of being Black, not because he was Black. Oftentimes, when you see Black people in high levels of achievement, they did it in spite of. They had to overcome a lot of stuff to get to where they are. That's if you look at someone like Jay-Z, who's amassed a lot of money, a Kanye West, anybody who's Black and made a lot of money, they've had to overcome a lot of things to get to where they are. They didn't get there easily. It's kind of like they'll say, if you're a Black person or if you're a woman if you get to a position of power, you had to work 10 times harder and be 10 times smarter, oftentimes, just to get to where you got. So just because you may know somebody Black who has money, or Black people have been able to do X, Y, and Z, that doesn't mean that the entire issue of race has been solved and that racism doesn't exist at all. That's kind of silly. All right, I'm done. Sorry.
I agree that there's a lot of white mediocrity in power, and going to Tristan's point that Black folks or women, or really minorities in general, have had to work extra hard to get there. And I think anybody that denies it is lying to themselves.
I mean, the destruction of Black Wall Street, that, you know.
Somebody also made a comment.
Charles Perry, one of those people that say, I got a Black friend, so I'm not racist. You're not racist towards them.
Somebody also made a comment saying that why are we so obsessed with things
Isn't
in
that
the
what Sam
past?
just said, though?
I'm gonna try to find that comment and put it up here. Here we
Somebody
go. Right
also
here.
said that why are we so obsessed with things in the past? And I'm thinking like, America is the only country that has not given its citizen reparation after they enslaved them.
Talk about it.
And
But
so
what about the places with active slavery?
Excuse me?
In America?
What about the places? What about the countries with active slavery? I don't think they've given.
I mean, I can't speak about other. I think we should keep it
now
to
in America.
Specifically with America. If you look at my biggest issue is if you look at America, right? You got after the Japanese were interred, is that the right word? In World War II, they got reparations.
The Jews got reparations.
Jews got reparations. Literally every group have gotten and even Native Americans got reservations. I'm not saying that was fair and that it worked out well, but they got land, they got property. Black people are the only group of people in America who have been wronged by the color of their skin and have not seen America try to make it right in some way or in kind. And I'm not saying you have to give checks to people, but I'm saying you can institute laws to fix things. So if you look at like housing, right? You had redlining laws and different laws that kept Black people from owning homes from the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, all the way up until like the 90s. So we all know home ownership is how you build wealth in America, period. So what we could do is let's have a program for Black people that helps them establish home ownership. So that way they can be on par with white people in terms of owning homes and building wealth generationally.
That actually brings up another point, is the predatory lending by banks in Black communities.
That part. Now, Ruth, I'm curious.
It's all the systems. They're all fucked.
I'm curious because I know Ruth probably feels a little bit differently than the rest of us. Do you think America is a racist country? Would you use that verbiage?
I would say I kind of agree with what you said earlier. It's a very loaded term that can mean pretty much everything. It can mean anything from every single person in America is racist to there's some institutions that are racist. So I would say, since everybody seems to be bringing their own definitions, I would define a racist country as one that as a whole is trying to promote an ethno-state and escalate inequality between racial groups to the detriment of minorities. So, and I kind of researched a few topics to talk about in that regard. I was thinking about like, our immigration's higher than almost anywhere else in the world. We have 4 times the amount of immigrants. So I don't think that we're trying to just like promote a white ethno state and not, allow any kind of whereas I would think a racist country would be doing that to a certain extent. And there's a lot of one thing I was looking into is how educated people are about like the history of racism and stuff. And although I found that there was like a 2018 study, there's been a lot of controversy over education and racism and things like that and how they're taught in the schools. And there was a study in 2018 that showed that only 1/3 of respondents knew that the 13th Amendment ended slavery. Less than half knew about the Middle Passage. Only 8% answered that slavery was the primary reason that the South seceded from the Union. So there were like textbooks reviewed. So one of the things people were talking about was like how education was lacking in some regards there. The interesting thing is that there was another study done in 2018 that also showed that like 41% of kids coming out of U.S. schools couldn't identify Auschwitz as a Nazi concentration camp. Like more than 50% of people said that from each according to his ability to each according to his need was said by either like Barack Obama or George Washington, which it obviously wasn't. So, and there were a lot of other things. More than a third did not know what century the American Revolution took place. So some of it is, I'd say there's a general lack of understanding of some history that in a vacuum might seem like it's intentionally targeted at Black Americans, though, which I can see from historical perspectives. Like I've seen like the textbooks from Alabama from the 50s that were like slavery was, I don't know, slavery was a form of social security or some like really crazy stuff.
After the Civil War, there was a concerted effort in the South to rewrite the history of saying the Civil War wasn't about slavery; it was about states' rights. It was about a state's rights to own slaves. That was literally the only. That was the only
state's
issue.
Right to own slaves. So yeah, there's
right,
and there was that. So and one of the other things I was thinking about was in terms of the systems being racist. One of the one system that I'm probably I've learned the most about is probably the the drug war. And while I would agree that in its early days there was a lot of racial tensions and things in that regard. From recent polling on this shows that a lot of people have kind of turned against the drug war. Most states have, hang on. So 37 states have legalized either recreational or medical marijuana. Actually, in Kansas, they just had a medical bill get through the House. So we've been one of the holdout states. I've been hoping that goes through. And there were some studies, I think this was in 2015 or no 2014, that said that in a poll 2/3 of people said that the government should focus on providing treatment for people who use drugs like cocaine and heroin. Pew Research found that 69% of white people and 67% of Black people support marijuana legalization. And then another interesting thing is that millennial Republicans and millennial Democrats both widely support marijuana legalization. So there seems to be a very big shift towards like things like the drug war being ended. Now, not all of that has been enacted in policy yet. So I think there's a lag between public opinion and when it actually gets through the legislature, especially considering that most of our government officials are the average age is like 65. So
real quick,
when I look at things like that, I would say that even if you take the supposition that the drug war is racist, which I can understand, if you saying that America is racist because things are still in effect when the majority of the population wants those things to change, it's just unfortunately taking a while to get those changes in place. I think it's like if a kid is failing a class and they pull their grade up to, I don't know, C- or something, and then you're just like, well, you're just doing as bad as you did when you were at an F. I think that feels like what you're saying. Well, America's racist, they'll always be racist, unless you're coming from the perspective of everybody is racist because it's just part of the human condition, in which case, okay,
y'all,
everyone's racist.
real quick, Ruth, because I gotta drag somebody. I don't even mean to be that person, but like, sis, I promise you, 7 years post Reconstruction was not the most successful time for African Americans. Actually, you know what? When African Americans did build their own communities because they had to, because they literally had to, because they couldn't go and be other places, as Rakia said, they got burned down. And it wasn't just the Tulsa riot or the Tulsa massacre. There are countless other Black cities that were just as successful, just as profitable, and were burned to the ground by certain people just because it was Black people being successful doing their own thing. So we're going to move on from that person because that got me real in my feelings and not made ooh-wee. So I have a question for y'all. So I when I told her I want to do this topic, my first thought was, I feel like by calling America racist, are we giving power to, I feel like in some ways, like I'm America, right? Like I'm America. Like I can exist in America. And I feel like when we call America racist, we take power away from queer Black people, from women, from any minority group who lives in America and calls America home. Would you guys agree, disagree?
Yeah. I
No, I
mean, yeah, that
mean
makes
it's a
sense when
part
you
of.
call an entire country something. That's why we didn't like it when people were during the beginning of the coronavirus. People objected to calling it the China virus because they were like, "Why are you implicating the entire country because of some random thing?" I mean, granted, racism is not quite the same thing as some random virus escaping from a lab, but yeah, I think it's. I'm not sure what the use is in just being like, "Well, America's racist," and that's it. End of conversation.
We have to
Go
bear
ahead,
in
King
mind
B,
too
because
that
you.
government. We have to bear in mind that government represents our country too. So until those laws that are written by a government official are changed, it's going to represent America as a racist country. So to your point, yes, a majority of Americans want marijuana laws to change, and that's all good and dandy. But then you have guys in power who still have Black people who are incarcerated at an extremely higher rate than white folks who are for marijuana violations a long time ago. It presents America as a racist country because they refuse to release those people. Because those guys in government, they're not changing the laws, they're not amending the amendment. So it represents America as a racist country. Now, the citizens, to your point, may not be racist, or majority of them may not be racist, as I said earlier. But until government make a move, systematic racism, is going to represent America as a racist country. It's just like South Africa. South Africa is majority Black, but South Africa was racist for a very long period of time due to apartheid, because the men in government there, who were all majority white, they represented the country as a very racist place.
I'm gonna go to
So
King
when
B because I know you wanted to say something, buddy, and then we'll go to Summer because Deria wanted to hear what Summer had to say to my question. So go ahead, King B.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, calling America racist because it is. I mean, it's built on racism. So I mean, it's not to say everybody is racist, but the systems, the country is built. You know what I'm saying? Like,
The system represents the country,
yeah,
so
the system
therefore
represents the
it
country.
represents it as a
It may not.
racist country.
It's not to say, Tristan, all y'all racist because you live in America. No, the country itself is a racist country because of the systems in place and the foundation of it. It's built on
Zaire
racism.
a couple of years ago, it was called Rhodesia because some white folks from Europe came down there and colonized it, and it was still represented as a racist country. And Zaire is in Africa. Well, it's no longer Zaire anymore. I think it's called the Congo. But they changed it. They changed the name from Zaire to Rhodesia, their own name. And majority of the citizens were Black, but it was still a racist country because they implemented powers and different laws to suppress the people there. The same thing in America.
I
I'm gonna
think
go to Summer.
once we get all the baby boomers out of here, we'll be fine.
Don't do the baby boomers like that,
They got it.
bro.
Oh.
Summer, because Deria wanted to hear what you had to say to my question. So, do you think by calling America a racist country, we're taking power from Black people, queer people, women, minority groups who we know more likely than not are not racist?
I think that's a really good question, and it really made me think. And to be honest with you, I think the more that we know, the better. Like, it's so much easier to say, "Oh no, America isn't racist." Like, I mean, what I was taught in school was Civil War was not. I grew up in the South. I grew up in Georgia primarily. Civil War was not based on slavery at all. Which then it wasn't until I got older where I learned, oh, the Daughters of the Confederacy was around and they paid for people to be like, no, of course it wasn't like that. So, and I mean, to be honest with you, I didn't learn about the Tulsa Massacre until probably 5 years ago. Like, none of this was taught to me in school. And with the way I grew, it wasn't until I really started finding things out for my own and talking to other people who are different than me, to where I finally said, oh, this is actually how things are. And it's much different than how I was taught in school. So with that being said, I don't think it's wrong to say that America is racist. I do feel like there's that point to where it's like, you don't want to necessarily give power to other folks. However, I do think it's important to acknowledge our past and how we got specifically where we are today and why some systems are in place. I hope that answered your question, Duryea.
I did. That was vibes. Good. Ashley, I appreciate your what's the word I'm looking for? Clearing up what you said. Do I think America is more racist than when there was slavery and Jim Crow? I think it's a different kind of racism. Like, I think sometimes we get fooled with the idea that if you're not hanging black people and beating black people and shooting black people, then that means racism isn't a thing. And it's like, no, like racism can be as simple as, I'll give you an example. Like when growing up, oftentimes I was the only black kid in my gifted class, right? And I know people say, well, how is that racist? Well, I know I'm not the only black kid who's smart. Like, I'm not like, that's not what it is. Or I saw on Twitter the other day, Deion Sanders tweeted about the fact that when the NFL draft happened, he said not one player was from an HBCU, and he coaches for an HBCU team. And he goes, I've seen these kids play. I know for a fact that there are guys who play at HBCU colleges who play better football than some of the people you just drafted. Things as simple as that are a product of a racist society or or institutional racism that exists.
Wouldn't that just be the person being racist who's making the choices? Why is wouldn't it be like why is that my fault as a white person because some other unconnected white person made a racist decision?
I don't think it's not your fault personally. Like I don't think it's not anyone's fault personally that institutional racism exists. I do think the earnest is on all of us to do what we can when we can in dismantling those systems. So
but no matter what you do, you're always going to be called racist.
I don't think
I disagree.
All of America is racist and it always will. Okay. Do you think America can ever not be racist? Just assume you can do anything you want. We can wave a magic wand and change every system.
It's going to take time.
So no, you don't think so?
I think it can be. I think it has to be an overhaul of the system and the people, but it really has to start with the system.
Probably not in our lifetime.
We gotta just burn the whole constitution and redo it.
So I'm here looking at I was here looking at the dictionary, and I think racism is classified pretty much as like a systematic thing.
It is.
To your point, Ruth, I don't think it's necessarily like classify any one person, and I think that almost sounds like what a lot of my white brothers and sisters feel is a sense of guilt. Like, okay, when they say racism, it's almost like, oh, that means you're talking about me. But no, it's like a systematic thing. I think what you're talking about is like
we've heard that
prejudice or bias.
Can't be racist, so who is it going to be against?
I mean, I think the
systematic thing.
I want to real quick because I want to, and I'll go to you, Justin, after this. But I want to touch on something that you just said. When people say black people can't be racist, oftentimes why they say that or the logic behind that is that racism is a very specific power dynamic. It's a majority oppressing a minority. I, as a minority person, don't have the power to oppress a majority because that's not the dynamic that's at play. It's no different than if you have a teacher and a student or a parent and a child. At no point can a child oppress their parent. Like it's not possible. When we talk about racism in that way, I think sometimes we have colloquial ways to talk about race and racism. There's scholarly ways to talk about it. But when people say black people can't be racist, I think that's what they mean. Obviously, anybody can be prejudiced. Anybody
can be prejudiced. Yes,
people can be prejudiced. Candace Owens is a prime example of a black person who is prejudiced against other black people. Go ahead, Justin. You were going to say something?
Black people hate black people anyway.
You actually said it. There's a difference between racism and prejudice. Racism is an institutional problem, where prejudice is like it's a person can be prejudiced. I guess a person could technically be racist too, but racism is more about the institutional powers within the power constructs within the country. What I would challenge you to do, Ruth, is because you're an engineer. I would challenge you to look at the numbers. The numbers don't lie. So if you start looking at the numbers and start seeing how the numbers kind of shake out across different areas, it'll be an eye opener for you.
Is that so is the argument that all disparity equals racism?
I think not. I
Systematically.
think
It's,
I'll put it.
I think it's.
I'll go ahead, Sam.
I was gonna say I think it's the opposite, or at least to his point, and maybe I'm just moving too much and I'm finally settled down. But to his point, it was, prejudice and racism are two different things. I saw that. What's that movie? Dear White People. And I don't know if y'all saw that or not, but kind of a theme or a topic that I noticed in that movie was you can't be racist against a majority of people. So like you can be prejudiced against white people.
Well, technically, there's more Chinese, there's more Asian people in the world than white people. So is Asian
Well, I
racism
mean, we're not talking
possible?
about the world. We're talking about America.
America, right?
And whether there's more Asian or black people in America than there are white or whatever you want to classify, the truth of it is whether there are more white people or not, we are the majority of America. The media, all of that. Someone said, the mediocrity of leadership of like white people. You know what I'm saying? Like there's so much mediocrity because I think it's just so acceptable for us to be just basic sometimes. Like it's just we get I mean, I'm sorry, we get promoted and we get to get away with that, and whether we're the true majority or not, we hold the power.
Not to mention nepotism as well.
Right.
And
so
I think go ahead. No, go ahead, Sam. Well, I was gonna say no, girl, you go. You got it. You got it, queen.
So I was gonna say maybe it's not necessarily the majority, and maybe it's just the power dynamic. But as far as I understand it, and I could be completely wrong, but as far as I understand it, prejudice can be against any group of people, but racism is specifically against a group of or a community of people that are not in power or not in the majority.
Okay. What would be the definition of a non-racist country, and what country would meet that definition?
Can I be completely honest? I don't think a non-racist country exists, and I'm going to tell you why. Like I don't. Mainly because Europeans went and colonized most of the known world.
Everywhere.
And like that's just facts. And the places they didn't colonize, like China, like it. Well, I mean, if you go to China, like I don't know this to be true, but like I think that you would have a difficult time. You would not. I know in countries like China, if you're not Chinese or if you're not from there, you are not going to be seen the same as. I don't know if it's as strong as like the way racism plays here, but it's still.
Well, considering they're genociding Muslims, I think they're pretty pretty far down the human rights abuses.
Right. So I don't think that there is a country that's necessarily not racist, but I do want to touch on one thing that goes something that you said earlier, Ruth. You said something about people calling making white people being accountable for all forms of racism or having a personal responsibility in it. I think sometimes race is a very uncomfortable thing to talk about, specifically if you are a person who is not black. You don't want to say the wrong thing. You don't want to be seen as hating black people, especially when you don't understand something.
Well,
and I
think
remember
this conversation is cleared up that it doesn't matter because there will always be racism. Like,
I think in the short term, yes.
I mean, I agree because I mean, I'm a religious person. I think everybody sinned. We're in a fallen world, and at a certain point, you can't. There's people are flawed, and there will always be people that are hateful or whatever. So I agree. It's just interesting that we really, really, really just want to like just slap the label in order to. I guess if it feels like it brings some kind of social change, I mean, okay.
And I think that's part of it. I do think that people, it's like if you call a spade, if you can call the problem, you can't fix the problem until you actually acknowledge the problem. And I think by saying America is racist, that's kind of the first step in being able to go, okay, well, America is racist because, and then we can point out specific things and begin to address those things. But I want to go back to a comment someone made and get you guys' thought on it. It was further up, but I remember what it was. So they basically said, what are some tangible things we can do to address racism? So from you guys' perspectives, what are things that we can all do personally that we can all do to make America less racist?
I thought it only matters what systems do, so I don't know why it matters.
Well, I mean, people make up systems, so we can do things in our everyday lives to help dismantle systems.
So can you understand from that angle why it makes sense why people, as soon as people criticize the system and it sounds like they're just calling everybody racist, white people racist? Because you can make the connection that way, but it's supposed to not make the connection the other way.
I can see why.
Earlier we were talking.
Wait, say that again.
So when you talk about saying that America's racist, that doesn't mean you're calling everybody racist. You're just criticizing the systems. But then you turn around and say,
no, I'm saying everyone's racist. I'm saying everyone's racist.
Sam did say that. I just want Sam said.
Okay, sorry. Keep going. Keep going.
So if you're saying, it's weird. Whatever.
That's why I said earlier. I appreciate conversations like this because we are addressing what the citizens can do to help change racism systematically. Because right now, like people like you, Ruth and Sam, we are talking about this. I'm pretty sure you're gonna have a conversation with another person, another white person, and said, okay, this is what I've learned from this particular panel, and then in return, we can actually address government and say, hey, this particular law that you have, that's racist. I would like for you to change it. So it starts from here. So this is what we're doing right now. So if somebody asks, what can we do? This is one thing. We're having a conversation about it. And that's where it first starts. The issues comes when you don't want to talk about it. And that's what makes America racism persist. This fear of talking about it because you don't want to feel guilty. And like I appreciate the fact that you're asking questions, Ruth, because I can tell you genuinely want to know the solution to certain things. And that's a good thing. So right now, I think we're heading in the right direction. It's the people who don't want to talk about it. That's the problem.
Because the thing is, when they talk about solutions to various systems, the one I've studied the most is the drug war. So sorry if I keep going back to that. That's just the one I've probably researched.
It's very fascinating. I understand.
So it's like I agree with when they propose solutions to ending the drug war and things like that. It's like makes sense. And then it's just like what? But then it just turns into then we just get into weird areas where there's articles are like math is racist. And I'm like, wait, what? Now we're just getting weird. So
I think sometimes we lose, especially with news articles, right? Like everyone wants someone to click their article. So sometimes a news article will have a very salacious title and it misses all the nuance about what the actual story is. So when it says math is racist, I think maybe what they're talking about is how maybe in how people learn. I remember I saw a thing about standardized tests, right? And about how standardized tests are worded and how they choose to word things that can be prejudiced against not just Black people, but maybe even Asian Americans or Hispanic Americans, so on.
Yeah, but I thought Asian Americans had the problem they were doing too well on the test, so Harvard was having to like score them down or something. So it's SAT tests are weird.
Hey Tristan, can I butt in a little bit? I used to just Charles down here. Charles,
go ahead.
Talking about racism won't solve racism, and I don't know if you're being cheeky here. It says that it starts with a conversation. Is when you fail to address that there's racism, that's when there's a problem. So yes, it starts with a conversation, but talking about it solely is not going to stop it. You have the conversation, and we address what needs to be changed, which is the laws, and that's how we solve it, Charles. Thanks.
Yes, Charles.
Everything starts with a conversation, Charles.
I also wanted to bring up the point about Ruth. I know you saying that it's weird when people are like math is racist, but I just kind of one thing, you're in engineering, and some things that I've thought about recently is, as more technology has come out, I've realized that a lot of minorities are affected by a lot of the technology that has come. For example, like facial recognition and software. For example, maybe if there's a facial recognition software and somebody gets arrested because they found a certain match or something like that, and then realizing, oh wait, no, it's actually a different person, all because that software wasn't tested. So that's just one thing that I also want to bring up, as far as like when somebody says like math is racist or something. Like there are a lot of things that go into that can also be looked into as far as racism in professions.
And there's a brilliant documentary about that on Netflix. I forgot what it's called, but it's literally about how facial recognition, specifically when it comes to Black people, is more often wrong and pops the wrong person, so to speak. And it talks about how the reasons why is how they've come up with facial recognition, specifically in America, versus how they develop facial recognition in countries like China and overseas, etc. So if anyone cares, it's on Netflix. I don't know what it's called, but Google it. Let's see. I want to go to this comment. I think a good start with affirmative action, which is blatantly racist. Actually, no, it's not. And I'm going to take a minute and drag for a whole. I don't even mean to be that person, you guys, but I hate this affirmative action bullshit. Let me be very clear about something. First of all, there are people in Harvard right now who are white who only got in because their parents went there or cut a check. Period, point blank, in a discussion. Second of all, most times when you have Black people getting jobs because of affirmative action, it wasn't because they weren't qualified in Black. It was because they were qualified and they were Black. And more often than not, you had 10 Black people who were very qualified for the job, and we only took 3, when really and truly all 10 should have gotten to be in that position. Period, point blank, end of discussion. And from what I've seen with my own eyes, you find me somewhere where a Black person got a job who wasn't qualified. You find me somewhere where a woman got a job only because she was a woman and not because she's qualified. You find me somewhere where any person who was a minority got a job due to affirmative action and only got the job because of that, not because they were qualified. Thank you. End of that discussion.
That affirmative action line is always the go-to line. See, you got a crumb right there. It's like almost throwing your bone. No, that is
every time.
That is a cop
And
out.
It's amazing to me because the assumption is that there aren't Black people who are qualified. Like in my mind, I always think, okay, there's a pool of 20 Black people who deserve these shots, and they're only picking a handful because they have to.
But that is the point. That's the point. They frame the narrative a certain way because of how this country was set up. That everything is framed a certain way. And that is, if we can break that framework, yes, we can break racism. We can break this down. We can shut it down. But we literally have to break the framework of America. And there are so many people right now that are not willing to do that. And they don't see the problem and they don't want to see it. At this point, I'm really convinced that if you're still someone, and I'm sorry, this is probably going to offend a lot of people, but
go ahead, girl.
If you're still someone that is saying all lives matter versus Black lives matter, you at this point are literally refusing to see the issue. We're saying the minimum is they matter. Not that they're beautiful, not that they're successful, not that they're intelligent, not that they're creative, not that they're any of those things. That they just fucking matter. That's it.
I'll give you one better too. I heard this on D.L. Hughley's page, and he said he was going off of a Christian conservative, and he was talking about Republicans and people who say all lives matter. He had this conversation, and he said, it's like in the Bible when he talked about Christ going back for the one sheep, and you have 99 in the fold. That's like the 99 saying, my life matter too. Yeah, we know that, but there's one right here. We need to go get him. It's the same.
He having some issues. We gotta help him
out. I saw another comment I wanted to Where did it go? Yes, that's what it was. So yes, specifically with affirmative action, that's obviously it does affect Black people, but specifically with women. Like it gets women, and my thing is we need affirmative action because there are still spaces where women, where Black people, where queer people still don't. There would be no entry if we didn't have those in place. Like that's just period, full stop. I think about like I read an article about the tech industry, right? Like more often than not, you would not see as many women in those positions of power if you didn't have affirmative action. It's a boys' club with most things because we live in a patriarchal society. So the most qualified individuals don't deserve the spot. I do believe the most qualified individuals deserve the spot. The issue is more often than not, the qualified individuals don't get the spot. Because if that was the case, it'd probably be a room full of
Because
women
of
and a
their
room full of
race.
Black people. Exactly.
They aren't afforded the
Because
same
of their race.
opportunities as other people.
Exactly. Because as I said
So
before,
excuse me,
whenever
are
you
you
are
calling? So one
go ahead.
thing. So I just wanted to clarify. In this case, are you calling all of the hiring managers, university admissions people, etc.? Are you calling them all racist in that conversation?
I do believe I don't think that yes.
Subconsciously, yeah.
Okay.
Are they
Subconsciously.
personally racist?
So you are willing to level the charge of racism against a bunch of people. Okay.
That
Just
happened to
wanted to
me.
clarify.
I can speak from
Yes.
personal experience. I applied at Towson
I am
University,
too. I am too.
Right. I think it goes back to what Sam said earlier. We have to stop. You can't think about racism isn't just I hate Black people. Let's go hang them.
Right. It's not as horrible as we think.
It's
If I make a microaggression,
It's not as horrible as we think, but we have to overthrow the system to get rid of it.
I think what she means is in terms of a personal way, right? Like with if you ask to touch a Black girl's hair, right? That's some racist shit. You didn't mean to be offensive if you say that.
Yeah, and I agree. That's completely rude and racist to do. But my sister has red hair, and we grew up in the Southwest, and people ask to do that all the time. So is that only happen to Black
She's
people?
also white, right?
I think it happens to Black people more
she's white.
often.
But she has red hair, and my point is that we often have people come up in stores and comment on her hair, or we have people in gas stations ask if they could pet it, and a lot of other stuff. So I agree that kind of thing is wrong and it shouldn't happen, and you should tell people don't be touching people's hair because that's just weird, and but it's like you just automatically assume that couldn't happen to any other person.
The best way I can
explain, it's just hard.
I think the best way I can explain it is there's a book, I forgot what the book is and I'll think of it when I'm not on here, but they talk about how they sent like resumes to this company and all the resumes were essentially the same experience, same schooling, all that good stuff, but the names they use names that are typical of Black people and then names that are typical of white people. Almost not, I'm making the number, I'm pulling it out of my ass, but 9 out of 10, they always went with the person with the white sounding name because the assumption was if your name was Shaniqua or if your name was Keisha, then you were from the hood or you were from the ghetto and you couldn't possibly be able to do this job. I don't think that people are purposely doing it to hate because they hate Black people, but I do think that people make a set of assumptions about Black people, especially Black people that they feel are beneath them or from the hood or from a certain kind of Black person, for lack of a better word.
So then why don't we just take off? Don't show names on resume. Don't show like.
I mean that would be cool, but we ain't gonna do that.
There's a myth. There's a myth of meritocracy that's happening where it's like there's these microaggressions that are happening where it's like, well, I believe the most qualified person should get the job or like things like that, where it sends the message of, people of color are given extra unfair benefits because of their race, or people of color are lazy or incompetent or something like that. So I think that's something to think about as well.
We appreciate you, Ashley, and thank you for your comments and opinions. We may not all agree, but we can. You were respectful, and we try to be respectful to you too. And please come back. Make sure you like, follow, and subscribe. Well, on that note, guys, it's like 10 o'clock. So, Rakia, are we gonna do another break and then do final thoughts? Pay a bill, y'all. We gonna pay a bill and we gonna come back. I think. Maybe.
The City Girls didn't get on simply because they're amazing at rap. People
Obviously.
Don't do that.
Ooh,
don't do that.
As per that clip I sent in the group chat, y'all saw
Don't do
the
that.
performance was not giving what it was supposed to give.
Don't do that. Don't you ever talk about Carisha and JT. I don't care what you got to say. Don't do that. Okay, and my point is this.
They got some bops, okay?
So they do got some bops. My point is this. And they're getting better, but my point is this. People like JT and Carisha and Cardi B because of who they are.
Their personalities.
We like who they are. So the thing that brings them revenue is their lives. Because Cardi B got on Love and Hip Hop because of her lives. And Carisha and JT we love their friendship. That's what people like about the City Girls is their friendship.
Yo, that was a clip from me, Derie, and Mo's podcast, Sipping Kiki every Sunday. If you want to just hear some stuff that's not as heavy as this, we talk about housewives, talk about rap beefs, talk about silly shit that maybe in the grand scheme of things don't matter, but we like it and it's a good time. So we're gonna go around the room with final thoughts. I'm gonna start with you know what? I'm gonna start with Ruth since you're new and we've enjoyed you this evening. You go ahead with the first final thought.
Well, thanks for having me on. I enjoyed the discussion. Yeah, I do think that there are, obviously there are racist people. There's two ways I can look at this. Either we say racism is just part of the human condition. It's always going to be here. We can try to manage it so it's not ridiculous, but there's only so much we can do. Or we can say that there's some kind of a baseline standard for that what we want to achieve. And I think that simply saying tear down the entire system it's an easy thing to say and it's a good virtue signal, but I think when it gets down to when it gets down to actually what we want, I think there needs to be a lot more specifics involved. And I'm open to ideas of reforming systems and making things more equal. And and I do obviously acknowledge that individual instances of racism happen, and that's unfortunately it's too bad, and it should happen less. So yeah.
All right. Next up, we're gonna go to Justin.
Thanks for having me on. I always love coming on here. So the main topic tonight was America racist, and I think if you were to look at the data and you kind of look at things objectively, I think you without a shadow of a doubt you can say that America is in fact racist. And you can see it in I had posted this earlier in the comments, the criminal justice system. We have 13% black population, but the black population makes up 34% of the jails. The 1% is only 1.3% black. If you go back to how lending up until Clinton actually tried to address the issue, but up until the 90s, lending in black communities was predatory. You get higher interest rates or you wouldn't get a loan at all. And you couldn't get loans to do household improvements. I could take up probably 30 minutes talking about this, but I'm just saying if you were to go back and just look at some data, I think it'd become pretty clear. Also, I suggest everyone watch the documentary 13th. It's a really good documentary on Netflix. It basically breaks down how after slavery, the criminal justice system was created to oppress black people. So watch it. Let me know what you think.
Vibes. Thank you, Justin. Next we'll go to let's do Sam.
Okay, so it doesn't matter. You can go to someone else.
Okay, you can go last. We got you. We'll go to Summer.
Yes, America is racist. The end. I'm just kidding. No, and that's all I have to say about that. Period. you know, I'll echo what I've kind of said. I'm pretty sure you know what side I am on this. But I do think that Ruth has made some very good points. And these are some things to think about, you know, as far as on a broader subject, saying, well, in that case, is every country racist? When can we not be racist? Things like that. But where we are here and now, yes, I believe that America is racist. We are a very new country, and we have done a lot of really gnarly shit. And I think it's important that we know and reckon with that. And just because we personally weren't affected by that or born into it or anything like that doesn't mean that other people born into these systems weren't affected. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right. Next up, let's go to King B.
And oh, sorry.
You good?
I'm good.
Oh, you good? Yeah, I couldn't hear you at first.
Oh yeah, America is very racist, and in order to change it, I think it starts with educating our, white brothers and sisters about the Black struggle. Ruth, I would say watch Hidden Colors. It's a 4-part documentary. It details the Black struggle on everything, just how we were brought here as slaves, and they basically took our identity. Like, we don't know who we are, we don't know where we come from, everything down to religion. Like, you create this white Jesus for us to pray to look up to. You got a Santa Claus who you look up to over your parents, So it's just programming, that make Black people feel beneath white people. And if we start educating each other of the Black struggle, and you can see what we go through, that we're not just out here, screaming racism, that it's actually me being a Black man, I gotta go 20 times harder than you to be successful in America because of my skin color. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. That's
all right. We appreciate you, King B. All right, let's go to Mario.
Oh, hey, yes. Thank you guys for having me tonight, man. I'm happy that we're able to have this conversation. I feel like in order to stop racism in the world, yes, this is where it starts with the conversation, because I know that Trevor Noah was saying that this is the apartheid stopped in South Africa. The white side met with the Black side, and they actually came and admit what they were trying to do to each other, and they came to a common ground, and that's how apartheid ended. And I think that the reason why such a large microscope is on for America right now about racism, and I know a lot of people, especially the white Americans in America, would say, okay, what's so bad about us? It's a simple reason, because they continue to low-key do evil things to its citizens and its minorities. So that's why such a large microscope is on America right now. And to what you were saying, King B, man, I'm a Christian, and yes, I have a little thing about the white Jesus thing too. But I always tell my friends who aren't Christian and they believe that Christianity was built on white supremacy, I said that couldn't be any further from the truth. If you look at history, Africa was practicing Christians way before Europe, way before Europe. Christianity came into Rome later on, and that was under persecution. They persecuted the Christians, and they accepted Christianity later. And of course, later on, through Da Vinci and his paintings, Jesus' skin changed. But I try not to get hung up on the skin color of Jesus, because it's the reason why he never went into detail how he looked, because I don't think that really matters.
It tells you how he looks in the Bible.
People talk about Roman in Revelations when he said that his skin was like bronze, all of that. But that scripture also said that his tongue was like a double-edged sword too, and his eyes were like fire. So it's that same scripture. But so I always say that's more so like Christ coming back in his power, more so than how we look. But I still let people ride with it. I try not to go into that, because again, if you follow what Christ said, until you make no graven image of me. So if we listen to him from day one and start painting pictures of him, we wouldn't get hung up on this whole, how did Jesus look? You know what I'm saying?
I'm just talking like as a kid, like think of, okay, this is the most powerful person, and it's a white man, Think of what that does to your mental.
Right. And it took me a minute to break out of that too. And as an artist, I realized that that was Da Vinci's way. He painted Albert Dower. Where Albert Dower painted the Son of the Pope. And that's how the whole white Jesus thing down into history, based off of the Renaissance and the Baroque period. But before that, they never even have any picture of Jesus before that. But it took me a while though to unlearn all of that stuff, to your point. So having a picture of a white Jesus is very detrimental to black kids. Yeah. But thank you guys though.
All right, and last but not least, Samantha.
Okay. So earlier someone posed, I think it was Ruth, microaggressions versus the framework of racism in America. And I think if you understand the framework, it creates the microaggressions. And so, yeah, it seems opposing, but they're one in the same, which is, yes, America is founded on racist systems, the education system, the justice system, the police system. Did I say the education system? The voting system, the housing, the market, the economy, the banking system, you know, so there are so many facets of the framework being structured in a way against minorities and black people mostly, you know what I'm saying, but minorities in general. And because of that, because it is within the framework of America, it creates this unconscious belief. And the power of that belief is that it is unconscious, is that it's socialized, is that it's the invisible backpack. I've read some articles like about white privilege and how it's just basically this invisible, like Dora the Explorer has her backpack full of tools. And it's just kind of this invisible backpack that we as white people have, whether we want to admit it or not. And so because this framework exists, it does not have to be blatant. It is socialized and it is unconscious. And racism isn't what we think it was or how we would have thought of it 50, hundreds, even 50 years ago. But it still does exist. And someone said this today, just because it doesn't exist in the same way does not mean it's not as powerful. And because the framework socializes us to be a certain way, these microaggressions come off, and it's like, well, that's nothing. It's easy to overlook. It's easy to brush away, and power. And someone said, until we can address it, like, what if you went to the doctor and was like, I'm in pain? And the doctor's like, okay, where? And you're like, I don't know. I'm in pain. You're the doctor. You're supposed to figure it out. Okay, is it your head? Is it your foot? Is it your stomach? Is it your brain? Is it like, what is it? Is it sharp pain? Is it dull pain? Is it consistent? Is it broken? You know what I'm saying? Like, what, you got to give me something. And until you can name it, you cannot address it. And so if we can just, I think personally, understand the framework and how it exists and how it has evolved and how it has shaped our society. And if we can really start to be honest about what that looks like and not so sensitive, and just honestly, like you were really asking genuine questions, and I appreciate that, for real. And thank you for coming on here, and I hope that we weren't too critical, honestly. I'm sorry, because
Yes.
sometimes
No,
I
you're
can get passionate. But I do think if we can start to understand all of that and really be able to be real about that, then we can change it, if we can really start to have real conversation and real change in legislation.
All right. Well,
Here's
hey
a book.
Rakia, hey girl. I
This
want
is a
to
good book.
thank everybody for coming on tonight. It was lovely chatting with all of you guys. Oh, go ahead, Rakia.
Oh, yes,
You
yes.
you go ahead, girl. Do it.
Okay, so thank you, Tristan, so much for hosting tonight. I'll let you do your final word in a second. But if you would like to be on an episode or be a panelist on Talk It Out, make sure you email us at admin@wonellymedia.com. So that's admin at Nelly.com. Also, make sure that you like and subscribe and follow us on Facebook, on YouTube. You'll find us on Twitch at Day Gamer. And just make sure you spread the word and share Nelly Media with your friends and family. So that's basically my spiel. Go ahead, Tristan. Sorry.
No, you're fine. So again, I want to thank everybody for coming on tonight. It was lovely chatting with all of you guys. I hope I did okay moderating everything. Like again, it's my first time, so I hope everyone felt heard, felt seen, etc. I'm gonna make it real quick about how I feel about the subject really quick. I want to end things on a positive note. The one thing I think that's really dope about America is that I think America has always been an aspirational country. Like we've always tried to be better and do better. And granted, we started a long place that wasn't good, and we're still not where we should be. I think we have consistently tried to make things better, slowly but surely. And just everyone do your part to combat racism and xenophobia and any other thing that holds anybody who's a minority back. So everyone make sure you like, subscribe, follow, share. And if nothing else, y'all have a good night. Deuces.
See y'all later. Bye.